What is going on, everybody? If you're clicking on this video, you're most likely trying to find the guys that will win you leagues off the waiver wire without all the BS, and that is exactly what I'm going to give to you in this video. So if you guys are new, make sure to be subscribed. It only takes 1 second so you don't miss more videos like this and pretty much every other video I post every day. But you guys know me, I absolutely hate to waste people's time in any of these videos, so let's get right into it with the very first player we need to be adding off the waiver wire for week 6. And that is Roshan Johnson, and possibly Donta Foreman, but I'll get into that as well. Now, as we know, Chuba Hubbard did exit their game in week 5 with an injury, which so happened to be a high ankle sprain, and we all know how tough those are to come back from. We've seen it time and time again. It's one of the more aggravating injuries you can get, but at the same time, Roshan Johnson did suffer a concussion in that game as well. He could be out anywhere from 1 to 2 weeks, or maybe not even any time at all. But either way, if Herbert's gonna miss a significant amount of time, or even 1 or 2 weeks, Roshan Johnson is the guy we want to be grabbing off the waivers. In week 1, he saw a majority of the third down snaps, a majority of the 2-minute drills, and all of the receiving work. He's been increasing his snaps week by week and getting a little bit more involved, but he's kind of been falling back into that RB2 role recently. But if Chuba Hubbard's gonna be out, he is the RB1 or RB2 depending on if he's healthy. Now, if we're looking in between the two, Foreman and Roshan, let's say they're both healthy, Roshan is a better pass catcher. He's also a way better blocker, but Foreman will probably get the bulk of the carries on the ground. And at the same time, Foreman has not seen the field since week 1, and he's gonna go exactly back to that non-existent role once Chuba Hubbard comes back. It's not a season-ending injury, so Roshan is the guy we want to be getting for the long term, but there's also a real shot that Roshan and Chuba Hubbard are both missing this next week, and that would make Donta Foreman a top running back you need to add. Usually teams will keep their 3rd or 4th string running back active for special teams purposes, but Donta Foreman hasn't been getting involved in any of it. So if you need a short-term plug and play, go with Donta Foreman. But moving on to the number 1 wide receiver we need to be grabbing off the waiver wire is KJ Osborne. This could be a real big play. Justin Jefferson, as we know, left week 5 with an injury. As of right now, it's classified as a hamstring injury. We don't know how serious it's going to end up being, at least at the time of this recording, but we do know that hamstring injuries have absolutely destroyed wide receivers in the past, and they're really a nagging injury to come back from. But if he were to miss at least a couple weeks or a significant amount of time, KJ Osborne and Jordan Addison are going to be the wide receiver 1 and 2 in this offense that is already extremely pass heavy, and that's not going to change just because there's no Justin Jefferson. This is the identity of the team, and at the same time, with how the season is looking for the Vikings, they're sitting at 1 and 4. I don't see a world where they're going to rush Justin Jefferson back, on top of the fact that he's visibly frustrated on the sidelines. He's not happy with how this team is going. He could very well just take his time and not come back super quick if they're not playing for a playoff spot and he's not in love with the team situation. What's the point of risking an injury? So that being said, Justin Jefferson's targets are going to be dispersed between Osborne and Addison. I don't think someone's going to completely take over the JJ role. I think it'll just be split. They did see identical usage in week 5. Addison is the long-term play here, but he's not on the waivers anymore. But KJ Osborne is a great add if Justin Jefferson were to miss any kind of time, even 1 week. He's going to be a plug-and-play start for us. The next guy that we want to be adding off the waivers is Kenneth Gainwell, and this isn't really a plug-and-play must-start kind of guy. He's not going to be instantly starting for us, but there's a couple interesting reasons why we need to pick him up. Eagles came out here in week 5 in a game against the Rams that stayed close the entirety of the way, and this backfield was decently split. DeAndre Swift saw 49% of the snaps, while Kenneth Gainwell saw 38%. The reason I say he's not an instant start is because if anything, he's more of a thorn in DeAndre Swift's side than he is a viable start himself. We knew the Eagles wanted to run a committee-type backfield since the jump of the season. It's just been their identity for years now. I know we all wish DeAndre Swift was the clear workhorse running back because, I mean, especially after week 2 where he absolutely destroyed, he's been looking very efficient and is decently better than Kenneth Gainwell. But that doesn't distract from the fact that they're pretty much splitting carries, and the usage split outside of just the snap count isn't the best either. If you watch any of these Eagles games, you can probably tell that every single drive, if not every quarter, they switch out, flopping between which running back they're going to use. They keep Kenneth Gainwell in for a drive, and the next time around they get DeAndre Swift. Swift is leading in routes out of the backfield and carries though. This just proves that if Kenneth Gainwell is coming out and seeing 3 targets out of the backfield and 10 carries a game already while Swift is healthy, if some unfortunate circumstance comes that Swift gets injured, he's going to be a clear workhorse league-winning running back. He's on one of the best offenses in the NFL and probably the best offensive line. We saw what Swift did in week 2 and there was no Kenneth Gainwell. It's probably going to reciprocate the same way. So if you're not looking to lock up a bench spot on a guy that has a really high ceiling but probably won't be startable unless an injury happens, you probably won't be picking him up instantly. But if you are a guy that has a pretty decent winning record on the season and you can afford using a bench spot on a high ceiling guy, which I assume you should do unless you're in dire need, these guys you should be adding onto your bench for the future of the season. But if Chuba Hubbard is not on your watch list, it's about time to get him there, and he's in a similar situation to Kenneth Gainwell, but just a little better. In week 5, we see Chuba Hubbard lead this backfield in snaps with 34 compared to Miles Sanders at 33. Now that pretty much is an even split, but still, the fact is that it's happening. This is the 2nd week in a row that this backfield has been split 50-50 completely, and even before then, it's been a decent split for the entirety of the season. But unlike Kenneth Gainwell, this is a situation where Chuba Hubbard's going to be a little bit more involved in the day-to-day, week-to-week situations. He's going to be involved in third downs. He's going to be involved in the goal line work a little bit. He's going to be involved in the 2-minute drill, regardless of if Miles Sanders is injured or not. But that is the main reason why we need to be grabbing Chuba Hubbard in the first place, because the main story to tell here is that Miles Sanders is clearly not 100%. He's been dealing with his groin injury for about 2 weeks, and if you look at his snap share, you can pretty much tell that this is a fact. And the real question here is Miles Sanders going to sit for a couple weeks and let his injury actually heal, or is he going to play through it and possibly risk further aggravating the injury and making it a lot worse than it actually is? Or there's always the chance that he just plays through it and doesn't get injured. But Miles Sanders is at an actual real risk of further injury right now. He's been seeing less snaps because of it. He's still going onto the field, but he's way less efficient. And if Miles Sanders were to miss some time, just like DeAndre Swift, Chuba Hubbard is a must-start, locked and loaded player we need to be starting every single week, regardless of if the team is 0-5 and haven't won a game. Now, Sanders will still lead this backfield completely when he is healthy. I don't want you guys to mix this up just because of the usage right now, but he's proven to be another premium handcuff like Kenneth Gainwell, like Jalen Warren, like Taj Spears, that will be top running backs every single week if their RB1 does get injured. So if you have an open bench spot to use and wait for those volcanoes waiting to erupt, most definitely add them, stash them on your bench. It's a lot more beneficial to stash running backs that might not have a whole bunch of value now, but have the potential for an insanely high ceiling than a guy like Brandon Cooks or Odell Beckham that don't really have that high of a ceiling, but are probably a bit more startable on the week-to-week basis. But speaking of Taj Spears, another thing I really don't understand is how is this dude only rostered in 36% of leagues? That has to be a joke. It has to be the fact that people just don't want backup running backs on their roster, because this dude is a premium ad, and I've talked about him in previous videos to the point where I thought I could stop talking about him, but apparently not, because he's still available in over 50% of leagues. Again, I just don't understand. Derrick Henry comes out here and sees 60% of the snaps compared to Taj Spears at 50, and for those of you guys wondering what the heck is going on, this math isn't mathing that equals 110. It's because they're both playing snaps at the same time on the field. But Spears is a guy that's been involved since the jump of the season. He saw 54% of the snaps in week 1, which is pretty high for a rookie running back, and he led in routes run out of the backfield. Again, pretty impressive alongside Derrick Henry of all people. Now, I want to preface this by saying Spears is never going to overtake Henry completely from the outside looking in, but it sure is looking close, and he's owning the receiving game, which is going to give him a bit higher of a floor in general in PPR leagues, and he's seeing the field a decent amount of time. And the reason he is such a good ad is because we've seen week in and week out when the Titans are losing games, they're utilizing Taj Spears because they can't just run out the ball. They have to get more creative, but when they're up in games, they're just running it out with Henry and letting him do his thing to waste the clock. But Derrick Henry's closing in on 30 years old, which is very old for a running back getting that kind of usage. And we have to be realistic and know Derrick Henry's going to have up and down games depending on the game script from here on out. But Taj Spears is probably one of the most premium running backs you can get off of the waivers right now, because if the Titans were to suck for the rest of the season and not be in playoff contention, there's no reason they're going to keep trotting out 30-year-old Derrick Henry and not let their rookie running back completely unleash and go crazy and see what they have with
go crazy, go stupid, go crazy.
That is the real issue here. No, Taj Spears isn't going to outwork Derrick Henry, but if we get later down the line of the season and they are nowhere near a playoff spot, you can believe that they're just going to sit Derrick Henry. But moving on to another guy we need to be adding off of the waiver wire, starting out with this tight end, and you've probably been hearing a decent amount of him recently, but take it from a Commanders fan, we have to be adding Logan Thomas. Besides the amazing week 5 matchup against the Bears where he saw 11 targets and almost 80 yards and a touchdown, which is a season high for him, he's proven to be an actual real receiving option for Sam Howell and the Commanders. He's seen 25 targets in 4 weeks because he missed pretty much 2 games with injury, and that target share is top 5 amongst tight ends. Now, the Commanders did have to come out here and pass more than they usually do because they were down tremendously against the Bears, but even outside of that irregular pass volume in week 5, he's shown to be a decent safety blanket for Sam Howell that he's going to go to every week. If he could manage to stay healthy throughout the entirety of the season, he's going to be a viable low-end tight end 1, and I know we've had a whole bunch of issues at the tight end positions with injuries and bye weeks, so if you need to fill in for any of those, he's a great guy to grab before it's too late. Now, you guys know I have to finish off this must-add waiver video with defenses you need to be streaming every week. If you guys aren't familiar with streaming defenses, it's pretty much just grabbing a defense every single week that has a good matchup and switching and not staying with one defense every week and riding out their schedule, because that usually isn't a great idea. So if you don't have a defense like the Cowboys or the 49ers, go through and stream defenses every week to find one with the best matchup that's going to get you the best points, because doing that is going to outscore the defense that you just stick with the entire season through the tough matchups. But either way, the first defense we need to be adding is the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons, which might come as a bit of a surprise, but they do get a good matchup against the Washington Commanders in week 6. They've had their fair share of turnovers over the past couple weeks, and as a Commanders fan, it isn't a real game unless they fumble or throw an interception at least once. But the Falcons defense itself ranks pretty well in wide receiver and quarterback fantasy points allowed. And the Washington offensive line is pretty much non-existent, so there is a lot of opportunities for sacks as well. And I also want to look at the Dolphins defense to add this week. If you're talking about streaming defenses, they are the #1 stream king of week 6. They get probably the best matchup of the week facing the 0-5 Panthers. And this is such a great spot because we know the Dolphins offense is absolutely going to tear up, especially on top of the fact that the Panthers defense is bad. But this is going to create a very catch-up heavy, pass-heavy game script for the Panthers, which is going to cause more dropbacks, which means more possibilities for sacks. And Bryce Young is going to have to pass a lot, so that means more opportunities for interceptions and turnovers. So that is going to finish off this video, and I appreciate every single one of you guys tuning in.